Okay, so that was a whole lot of nonsense. But yeah, so basically I wrote my slide deck in Bash. So it's my whole, it's all menu-driven Bash. So we'll just work through here. Make it bigger. All right, I'll zoom in some for you guys because I can't. Right, that is, I think, what was said by her. Is that better? All right, so prerequisites. These are the important parts of the talk. Then we get to the other stuff. The U-Drink protocol is a thing that we do. Yeah, it's nice and cozy. Thanks, guys. I didn't think about like presentation stuff. So U-Drink is a thing where it's essentially an adaptation of the schmooball stuff, where essentially the speaker declares that the U-Drink is a thing that's happening, prepares the drink, and then just decides at random will to hand it out. So our drink tonight is actually something I've called liver bleed. And it's basically Sailor Jerry and cider. I was going to use woodchuck, but Angry Orchard's a little bit sweeter, and with the quantities of rum that's going to be in this, it's probably nice to have that. So we'll get started with this. I have help with distributing these when they come out, but it's basically a one-to-one sort of, not even really a cocktail. It's just a let's just pour all this in a pitcher and see how it goes. So. That's, this is how this goes. This will happen a couple more times. This is more entertaining than my computer not booting, right? A little bit more. We got plenty. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. So basically, the rules of U-Drink are, if I goof, I have to take a drink. If you ask a good question or point out a goof, you get a drink. If I decide you should have a drink, then you get a drink. It's basically an excuse to drink. This is put together by Deviant along of his own fame. Deviant's a great guy. A lot of love for Deviant and the Tool guys here in the U.S. And is Deviant here this year? I haven't seen him. He's at a wedding. Because I always like to give Deviant a drink for bringing this glorious thing to our knowledge. But yeah, I mean, this is it. Squeak's going to be our friendly distributor. And if you need more things, they're there. I'll even put a lid on it for you.
Thank you.
So it'll pour nicely. And there we go. So that's that. Yeah, I actually need a drink too. I cut my hand opening bottles though. That's good. All right, who am I? I am with, that didn't work. So my ASCII art's totally failing out. I'm with FAIL. It's the FAIL Association of Lock Sport Enthusiasts. Thank you. Federation, yeah. It's not bad, actually. I've never had that before. It's really not bad. I should drink again for not having drunk it beforehand. And I break into things. I'm a penetration tester. Adversarial engineer, I don't know what do you call those things these days. So we're going to talk about password cracking. This talk is titled Password Cracking for Noobs. I can't forget about this. So FAIL, we put a lot of code out. We're very big into the free and open information sharing, but it's only to an extent. If you are Dennis Kuntz, you're not allowed to look at this stuff or use it. Dennis is even here. I just need to make sure this goes on the record and he is aware that Dennis is not allowed to deal with any of this. You're not allowed to talk to Dennis about this. It's just the rule. So that's just kind of it. Yes?
Who is Dennis
Dennis
Kuntz?
Kuntz is Dennis. I mean, it's Dennis. I mean, that's okay. Like, nobody in here knows who Dennis is. It's okay. He's with the Rotary Club. He's from Ballantyne. So, I'm sorry, he's from near Ballantyne. No, we love Dennis. Dennis is actually pretty influential in Fail having some semblance of organization because he invited us to a conference. And that apparently makes people excited. So we're going to talk about hashes. We're not going to talk about Dennis because that's against the rules, and we always play by the rules. So we're going to get through a couple of things. We're going to talk about what hashes are, what they look like, why I did this in Bash. My ASCII's not going to work there either, I'm sure. But basically, a password hash is the result of a cryptographic function that takes an arbitrary string of data and returns a fixed size string. So you take this little bit, run it through crypto. I'm not going to talk about all the different kinds of crypto because this is for noobs. And then you get a fixed length result. Various different types of crypto algorithms output different varieties of the actual end result. But, you know, what we end up with is you take password 1, run it through MD5, and you get this booger at the top. You SHA-1 it, you get that, and the NTLM version of password 1 is this. So password 1, password 1, password 1, that's the same plain text value, different crypto schemes, same length. So even if you put password 2 or password 22 in any of these, they would still, if it's MD5, come out to the same length as password 1, same for SHA-1, same for NTLM. Now, why I did this in Bash was for the lulz. I'm glad that worked. That's like the only ASCII that's going to work. So there are a couple of aspects to getting hashes. One, you let other people get them. I mean, by all means, that's perfectly viable. We'll talk about methods of doing that. Dumpmon is a great place to, the Twitter account's awesome for grabbing password dumps. There's a nice blog post that Jordan put together on his Twitter bot that he wrote. His code's open sourced, so you can download it, run it yourself, modify it, add regex, whatever. And an example of this, you know, you just look at the Twitter feed, and it gives you a link, tells you what it triggered on, and this one it's just emails, but you know, oftentimes you find just loads and loads of hashes. So it's a really great place to find a hash and try to work on, you know, cracking it once you get that. The other way is for you to go get them. Now, how can SQL map be real if our eyes don't reel? SQL map has a nice Google Dork feature. Well, Google's pretty good about blocking this now, but the whole point of SQL map Google Dork is just to automate stealing and dumping things. Well, you can dump password hashes out of tables a good amount of time. If you have a compromised system, Metasploit has some amazing modules. SMB exec is wonderful, just a pro tip on that. Or even pulling hashes from volume shadow services. So say you're on a domain controller. Safest way to get hashes off of a domain controller is to pull them from volume shadow. If you have network access, you're just plugged in. Plug the Spider Labs guys. Laurent does great work on Responder. That's a NetBIOS name service lookup poisoning tool. Does a great job of capturing hashes. He's been working on the SMB relay portion of that as well, but we're mostly interested in capturing hashes for the sake of cracking them. Metasploit also has an SMB listener, and some interesting, two of the ways I use Metasploit to grab hashes that still work. They shouldn't work anymore, but they still do. You can fire up the Metasploit SMB listener with that auxiliary, and either through Internet Explorer, you can create an image tag, which is great, a UNC path image tag in Internet Explorer, unless it's blocked somewhere between client and endpoint. If you point it at your Metasploit handler, it will issue a challenge, and the host or the affected machine will actually send its creds in a hash format. It'll send the net NTLM password or cred, username, password, hash. So it's a great way to get those. Another method is to use a Word document, resume.doc. Nice and fun to send to HR. Same thing with that Word UNC injector. You point it to wherever your Metasploit handler lies and then grab that hash that way. All of these are useful in obtaining the hashes. That's kind of one of those things, and kind of my push in developing this talk is, at this point, most of our password requirements in our organizations are 8 characters minimum, 3 of the 4 different types of characters. And I want that to go away. I don't have really good solutions on how to train users to make that better, but I mean, XKCD comic for everything, right? The correct horse battery staple doesn't meet anybody's complexity requirements. It was a much better password than, you know, Molly 1984. Because if you give me a password regardless of the complexity, if it's only 8 characters, I can use my friend's gear and try to crack it like 2.4 billion attempts per second. Like 8 characters is going to fall if I'm just brute forcing. And as we're going to see as I kind of get towards the demo aspect of this, I'm going to show a little bit more of a mindset beyond just blind brute forcing. You can be way quicker than that. We'll kind of talk about getting there. So I love stealing hashes. I love cracking them. And I think if you get a hash, most of the time you should then own that account because, you know, that is the thing. So what do you do with them? All right. So again, menu-driven bash. It's great. Press 1 to continue. You need to know what kind of hash it is. You can manually identify these by looking at the character sets and certain length. I won't bore you. I'll let you read Wikipedia on that. I mean, MD5 is pretty easy giveaway, base64, et cetera. But there are some great automated methods. The smrk3r hashtag script is great in that it will identify multiple types of hashes and then output them to a file and with the various amounts in there. Hash identifier is a Python script that's also pretty good at taking the same manual characteristics you would use, but just kind of automates them. And even John the Ripper is really good about identifying a password hash. If you have a hash, you're not really sure exactly what kind it is. If you just run a quick instance of John, which I'll show you how to do, and then put that hash in there, it'll give you its guesses as to what it thinks it is. And it's usually really accurate. So if you can't figure out what your hashes are, that you're not lost. All is not lost. Whoa, what did I do? What do you do with them? Then you crack them. My favorite type of crypto is rubber hose cryptanalysis. This is where you tie somebody to a chair and beat them with a rubber hose until they give you their password. How do I computer? If you want to use your computer for that, because we're going to be nonviolent, GPU graphics processing units, are really awesome in the regard of parallelization of operations, which makes them really flexible in writing applications that can use that functionality to do password cracking at insanely fast speeds. Like, it's so fast that like the whole rainbow table fad should be dead because rainbow tables aren't feasible. You can't carry around that much with you. Maybe you can store it somewhere. We'll talk about a suite of tools that Mubix has developed that can, if you have somewhere hosted elsewhere, that you can actually maintain that amount of data. But we're talking terabytes and terabytes of data that, I mean, at the end of the day, it's cool. It's a really neat thing. But like the time memory trade-off thing in my mind, like if you're on a test, or if you're wanting to do something malicious, time is of the essence. Your ability to be portable is very important. So for me, it's more the ability to adapt to any given scenario than to maintain, you know, a petabyte of rainbow tables so you have all the character lengths and types and et cetera. Two of my biggies that I go to for cracking, I don't use off-crack very much, but John the Ripper is my go-to for quick engagements. If I have a hash, throw it in just my Linux machine or whatever, or Windows, whatever, it doesn't matter. And then Hashcat, OCL Hashcat's the GPU specific one. John the Ripper's working on it. And this is my shout out to Mubix. Whitechapel is an amazing front end for automating and agentizing, if you will, your password cracking. You get it set up and then you just upload word lists or hash lists and whatever, and it distributes out the workload using Redis, and it's great. I highly recommend you kind of take a look at that, at least get it setting up and running. And he's done some work on it in the past 6 months or so just to update the repository. And the last one that I use pretty heavily is this zip file at the bottom. I know everybody's going to be hesitant to download it. That's fine. I understand. I know how that goes. If we didn't zip it, it's huge. So basically, Matt and I and Adam, about 2 years ago, how long have we been maintaining that list? A couple years now? Matt got a good cracking rig, and we all had a nice manic swing on collecting all the leaked passwords we could. Because we had this idea, hey, we know a lot about how people make passwords. We know that usually it's a capital first letter with a word with some digits or some characters or whatever. So let's get as many of those as we can and maintain that as a word list. Cool, that started out pretty well. Well, when we started doing client engagements and cracking more, getting more in-use passwords. And I don't have the final count, but I mean, I still update this list about once a month and push a new one up to the fail site. But honestly, I don't know of a better, more efficient word list. There are bigger ones. That's what she said. But as far as the capabilities of base words and base configurations, and then what you can do with various word mangling rules in the applications, I'm a big fan of that file. I maintain it, so clearly I'm a little bit biased, but you're welcome to download that or not and use that to crack your passwords. I'm cranking through things pretty quickly, and I have a lot in the pictures. Anybody have any questions? Yes, Evan. Yes, this man needs a drink. Yes, sir.
How do you deal with salted hash? I don't drink. I have a
Yeah, Detro gets it. He gets it. If you want to drink, just put your hand up. We'll see if we have enough. But yeah, that's fine. No, that's fine. Everybody else will drink for you. It's perfectly fine. Do you deal with salted hashes in the same way? If you have the salt, then you just throw that in with your syntax for cracking. If you don't have the salt, well, usually the salt's in the same table. That was one of my favorite things about the Federal Reserve leak, not this past February, but February before, when the Fedline notification system got popped, and it was like all the login information, personal contact information for all these small banks, and they had all the same table had the MD5 hash and the salt. It was right next to each other. Like, cool, thanks. So, you have questions or you want alcohol? Yes. Well, let's start with a question. I don't. It's too expensive. Yeah, Googling the hash is great. I didn't even think the Linux admin comes with the, what about the Google? Because that's where he spends his day. That's how he stays employed. Yeah, it is actually surprisingly effective. Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's always fun. You can also search like GitHub and places for hashes. I didn't think about that either. Like, it's great to search for hashes in GitHub because people upload it in their code repos. Yes. Usually cracking. Yeah, what I like to do on a pen test, and this is a nice trick I learned alongside Ryan Lynn, running responder, getting a net NTLM hash, cracking that, and logging into a machine using SMB exec. I can be done with as far as the exploitation aspect. You got to do post-exploitation, which is where the real meat and bones is, of course. But the initial exploitation, once you have a CRAD, I mean, we've done in like 30 minutes. And you can have domain admin at that point. Am I taking too long? I need to stop talking?
No, get it in 10.
Get it in 10? What are you? Domain admin. Oh, in 10? Yeah. I'm being lenient. I mean, my best time from fish to domain admin is 4 minutes. So don't cache your domain admin creds on the workstations. Yes, Evan. Oh. That's funny. Yeah, take care of the Evan. Yeah. I'll actually, yeah, you're welcome to download my shell script if you trust it. I mean, this is my documentation. You can find tutorials on password cracking. I'm not presenting anything anybody else hasn't already done. I don't think I'm giving you any groundbreaking novel stuff. But I find that sometimes it's difficult to find all this in one chunk of, I've got a hash, what do I crack it, what sort of concepts are around it. So I haven't written anything about it. I prefer to talk and not have to write because, I don't know why. So you crack them. We already did that, right? I'll have to let that paste back out. What's that? Are there any other questions? Yes, I'm sorry. I don't know. I can't think of anything. Okay. Yeah, it'd be interesting to work with. I've not done anything with that. Generally don't run into that. The vast majority I hit for web stuff is MD5, which isn't technically crypto. And then for Windows environments, it's all NTLM or net NTLM. Yes, sir.
Okay. I noticed you mentioned that AMD GPUs are really
Yeah,
good at this.
they're better than NVIDIA.
The one caveat is, lately, you might want to get one that's custom cool because remember that
They get warm.
that some of the AMD's reference card designs, except for the dual GPU card, they have been less than still, and I'm worried that they'll burn out.
Yeah, no, they do get hot. It's a good way to heat your house in the winter. Password cracking.
Make sure you get one that is custom, has
Yeah.
better cooling than the rest.
Yeah, that's a good thing to keep in mind from your hardware nodes perspective. Yeah, I mean, you can, running a card like that. And then granted, they don't always run for huge extended periods of time. Sometimes they do, but yeah, you definitely want to make sure your stuff stays cool. Because apparently computers don't do great when they get hot. That's just, Ryan?
So if you haven't grabbed the bleeding edge of John out of GitHub, it has new stuff being added all the time, including like thread support,
Yeah.
so you can fork up to the 16 processor.
Yeah. Yeah, John OMP. Is that the fork of that that's still doing that? Or is there a new one?
John on GitHub actually has a fork with the bleeding edge.
Okay.
They're adding new stuff to all the time.
Because I use John-OMP, which handles the multiprocessor stuff, but I haven't looked at the newest. What Ryan's saying is you stay on the bleeding edge aspect of GitHub. John's got a lot of new features that they're adding. And even Hashcat just did a huge revamp of stuff, so you kind of got to stay on it. Yes, sir? Yeah, but the Amazon, oh, party foul. Drink. That's yours. Yeah, the question was, the question's related to how distributed can you get with this? Whitechapel is actually probably the best distribution interface I've seen for it. Amazon, you can do it with Amazon. You know, the typical neckbeardy sort of complaint is they use NVIDIA. So it's like fundamentally not going to be as fast as AMD, but it'll do. Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think, I didn't keep it in these notes. There is a guy that has a pretty good tutorial on building out that type of army with Amazon. You can find it pretty quickly with a Google search. Yeah. Right. Yeah, you got to be careful on that. They'll bill you pretty quickly. But yeah, I mean, by all means. Oh, I mean, not careful from a legal perspective. I don't care. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Right. Yeah, they're nerfed pretty hard. So, I mean, you can spend $1,000 and buy an amazing cracking rig. And just put Windows on it. Who cares? Whatever. Whatever gets the job done. Or don't. Who cares? All right, cool. So this is the time that we tempt the demo gods. I've scripted that too. It's all in Bash, don't worry. So what are we going to do? Well, this is going to be the command I'm going to run. I've got a fresh dump of NTLM hashes directly from an Active Directory. And we're going to run John. We're going to tell it to emit a line and standard out when the hash is cracked. We're going to tell it to use its default set of word mangling rules. So if it's got an O, it'll swap it with a 0, etc. The format is the format of hash. I'm going to use, that's the word list I'm going to be using, and that is the text file of hashes that I'm going to be running on. So this isn't difficult at all, especially when you look at Hashcat. And I don't have a Hashcat example that I'm going to show in here, but Hashcat can be obtuse when it comes to nailing syntax down. John the Ripper's much more friendly in that regard. If you have some serious cracking to do, Hashcat's the best place to go for that just because of the GPU stuff. And John's getting there. But I mean, honestly, most of my time, because I can't carry around the desktop with me, is done in John just because of the effectiveness of this word list. And we'll talk kind of a theory on that again, is we know how people use passwords. So if we can maintain password lists that are a lot like how people actually make their passwords, when we have their hashes, we basically have their passwords. Entirely too many CEOs have password 1 with a capital P. Yes, Jedi. I have not worked on customized rule sets. There are some really good ones out there. I like actually the set of rules that come with Hashcat. I have some really good rule sets as well. And they do all kinds of fun stuff. Nice. Good shot. They do all kinds of fun stuff with the mangling and substitutions and that sort of thing. And there's also the added feature of Markov chains, which is a statistical approach for human guessing or intelligent guessing, and that speeds it up as well. You can tell John just to use like John-I and just give it a list of hashes, and it will brute force, but it will do it based on Markov chains, so that it's not just guessing A, B, 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 etc. It's nice and intelligent about it. Yes, sir. I don't because I work in America. No, sorry. USA. Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't deal with that because America. No, I do have, I do a lot of work out west, and naturally I have a pretty large Hispanic base. So, I mean, it's the same kind of concept. You've kind of got to dig into the mindset of that. I mean, I think that growing up in America and understanding the culture that we build, it's, I think you have to apply that same mindset to your wordless creation or wordless gathering. So, I mean, a place to start for me, find a popped Korean blog and that's got a leaked password list and start there. So, I mean, you get an idea, and that's really the whole concept is back to the XKCD thing. We've spent 20 years teaching people how to make passwords. It's hard for them to remember, but really easy for computers to guess. And a lot of that has to do with, even more so now, because we know how people make their passwords. The RockU password list leak and running stats on that and learning about that was I mean, in my mind, as far as mainstream password assessment goes, pretty revolutionary. Because it's dumb to just try A, B, 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 A, B, C, et cetera. You can be way smarter about it and much more effective. And that's kind of what we're going to do. So let's tempt the gods. I gave you the script I'm going to run. It's in here, I promise. Let's see what it does. Oh. That was quick. Nice. Well, we're going to do it manually then.
So if you have generated passwords from, password generators like LastPass or something like that, does that greatly reduce the effectiveness?
So there are tools and algorithms for LastPass and KeyPass and that sort of thing where you can crack that password. The master passwords can be cracked. So it cuts down on it in that you have password storage, you can generally have better passwords. So if I have somebody that's using a password generator somewhere, when I phish them, I'll just send them a fake login form. Make them give it to me. Because if you send a user and say, please log in using your current extension, your new HR forms portal is ready. Please log in using your existing credentials. A lot of times people do it. I don't know if you're aware of that. Like, you send somebody an email. I tell people all the time, if you ever go into a bank with a gun to rob it, you're doing it wrong. Just send them an email. I know a story of a financial institution who actually got an email from one of their customers and said, please send this amount of money to this account, et cetera. And they sent it. They sent an email. It turned out dude's Yahoo account had gotten popped, and they just shipped $27K to Malaysia. So he wasn't very happy about that. That's not supposed to be a thing. Like, banks are supposed to be better than that. But, all right, so. Okay, sorry. That's not me. All right, sorted, and then oh, I know why it's mad. Drink. There we go. So we're printing these as they're cracking. Here's our passwords, right? All fully compliant by any sort of compliance standard I've run into. So, oh, thank you. We're getting there. It's 1.7% done, and we've already cracked 416, which is kind of nice. But look, I mean, this is me, one at bang, vacation.1, walker123 bang, welcome one bang. These are how people make their passwords. Dead serious. This is real. This is out of Active Directory. Fresh from the press. What's also fun with this is it has the histories in it. That's always fun to crack too. And as you can see here with socks, notice how they changed their password, or didn't. exclam, pound, $, at. I had one of my favorites that I cracked is secure caret. And I had the history on that, and the one before that was secure percent, and then $, and then pound, and then at. They were just moving their way up the number pad. Yes, sir. Right, yes. You can actually pass these hashes. So you don't have to crack these if you get them. Yeah, these are out of Active Directory. Nubix has actually a really good blog post on Room 362 on how to safely pull and parse NTD, the .dit stuff, NTDS, and SAM and system stuff, so that you can pull these hashes out. I mean, we kind of get the idea of what we're working on here. Based on that, let's see. Well, whatever. Drink again. Yeah, I'm about to. So our outcome is pretty nice in that we have the hash and the password, and they're all in there. And that's kind of it. I'm using John, free stuff. I mean, there's lots you can dig into. Again, this is password cracking for noobs, so I'm keeping this extremely simplistic. And I'm more of a boots on the ground, let's get it done sort of guy. So yeah, by all means, don't run Responder on the hotel network. It's against the rules. I mean, we follow the rules here. That's what we do. We are a culture of rule followers. Yes, sir. Like Active Directory policies? Yeah, I mean, make them 32 character length minimum. 32 character minimum length. Because length and uniqueness matters way more than complexity. I mean, I do this talk for like C-level bankers, and they're like, I see my password in there. I'm like, yeah, probably. Yes? I think doing password audits is a great idea. I think by all means you should dump your Active Directory and check your password strength. But I mean, there's other things that have to go into place first. I mean, this is solely about getting the hashes and cracking them. Once those hashes are cracked and able to be used, or in this case, just you have the hashes, there are a lot of other things that come into play for defending. I mean, if you can get these hashes, you don't have to crack them. So in the sense of, I mean, there's some, so Windows, the latest Windows patch did actually shut down some of the pass the hash functionality, but it has more to do with administrative accounts and local accounts than network accounts. So they didn't really fix it. SMB relay is still a problem. It's not something, so they fixed that back in 08. And essentially SMB relay attacks in the past, you could capture a hash and then just replay it back to that host and gain access. They fixed that, but what they didn't prevent was you taking that hash and passing it onto another machine and then logging in with that without ever having to crack a thing. So there's a whole other sphere of machine compromise, but I really love printing these out and going to my last day pen test findings meeting and like, here you go. So here's how great your passwords are. And when you see them, you start to realize, yeah, I mean, our password policy, we've never gotten a knock from any sort of compliance. And let's be honest, compliance requirements drive security motivation in most organizations. So if they're not seeing any sort of, the board's not complaining about their compliance reports or their compliance reviews because they meet password policy, yeah, I want to change that. I don't want that to be a thing anymore. That'd be funny. So you just like hope somebody panics. Yeah. Right, yeah, it'd be peanuts. And then, yeah, immediately, like the next day, all right, peanuts.2 doesn't cut it. Like, no, it's bad. That's bad practice. So, yeah. Did I? So yeah, I mean that's basically it. The concept is hashes are a thing. They exist. You should steal them, and then you should crack them. Like, I want to take the whole N80 approach of like, do illegal things. Like people are like, don't use this for real. Like, who cares? You're an adult. If you get caught, it's not my problem. So I don't care. I don't care what you do. Yes, sir.
Another thing that I encountered in my last job was that a lot of people kept getting hit by things like CMOS.
Yeah, this is because you have really bad. Like, antivirus is dumb anyway. We had a good talk last year about how antivirus is dumb, but.
Another way of bypassing the whole cracking process?
Yes and no. I mean, that's we're talking like system takeover at that point with malware, and you know, if you want the hashes. So here's another interesting thing too. Like related, I think kind of related to that. I leave for my external handler. I leave them up for a while after I'll do a fish, just because I mean sometimes I'll get shells a month later from an org. I'm like, why are you just now running this download? I don't know why. But I was sitting there one day prepping it for a fish to go out, and suddenly 132 hashes hit my handler. Just, I was like, what? And immediately after that, I saw from the same source address, administrator try to log in. Got the administrator hash again. So it was like I had a ton of hashes, and then I got the administrator. So I started digging into it, and the source IP was actually from an auto dealership out in California. I promptly called them. Like, I don't know what just happened, but a ton of stuff just hit me, and blah, blah, blah. They didn't want to talk about it. But just kind of digging around on it. My best theory on this, hypothesis, pardon me, use precise language as much as possible. Drink for using theory wrong. Gravity's a theory, by the way, in case you don't believe in that. My hypothesis is that that environment got compromised. Most likely all the hashes were obtained, and they threw whoever they is, probably Russians, of course. I don't know. Russians. My guess is they had a list of other hosts they wanted to attempt to log into and somehow fat-fingered my handler. And then when they saw all of those successful logins at that host, they followed up with a legit administrator account and whatever, blah, blah, never to be seen again. But it's really, really interesting how you can do that. Your residential ISPs probably won't allow you to do this, but if you have VPS somewhere, another fun way to do this is just to set up the responder handler on that, so you don't have to install a full-blown Metasploit just because it's so big. But you can actually run responder and just leave it up, and like you'll get hashes from everywhere. You'll get it from Lloyd PC in Roanoke, Virginia. I have no idea why I get these. It's like a fun honeypot, a funny pot. Thanks. I'm a dad now. I have to make bad jokes. Dad, I'm hungry. Hi, hungry. I'm John. Nice to meet you. So that's basically it. Hashes are a thing. You should steal hashes. You should crack hashes. You can do these things to do it. And that's the end of my presentation. So this is not nearly as polished as a Cisco marketing video, but, you know. Any more questions? Yes, by all means. I have not run into hash. Theoretically, hash collisions shouldn't happen. That's kind of like the basic premise of crypto, but we know that doesn't always work out. I've never run into that. I mean, it's really tough to even MD5 hash collide. It's possible. That's one of those things that I love when you run like vulnerability scanners, and they're like, this is a weak algorithm, runs the possibility of hash collisions. Yeah, show me that in the wild. Like, do that. I love your lab work. It's good. It needs to be fixed. It's not a heartbleed issue, though. Like, I'm sorry that, and it's like the scanners do nutty things. Like being able to pull like the system time, TTY, out of pings, and that being like a severe finding in Nessus and Nexpose. Why? What can I do with that? I know what time it is over there. Cool. Oh, boom, dude. Got your mom too, man. Like, I feel like a 13-year-old writing that up in a report. Like, I'm like, That's not ponage. That's silly. So,
I have a question.
yes.
If you're limited by the number of characters you're able to use in a password field, say you run into 12 or something like that, and you don't want to use a password generation tool, which
Yeah.
you probably should do, but what human obfuscation techniques do you recommend to generate a good password?
Bitch at the vendor. Say again? Yeah, non-printable ASCII characters, alphanumeric. Those work too. I've run into an organization that has a written policy where their employees have to use the alt number pad codes as one character. They can't enforce that.
Does John test that with that guy?
I don't know. I don't know what you can specify what character sets you want John to use, and there are mangling rules for. I think they're.
Easily out of the normal binding stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not in my list. Yeah, I mean, if you've got it, yeah, let's say, yeah, it's a good nuts and bolts question. If you're stuck to 12 characters, or let's say you're stuck at 8, or 16, for that matter, and you're worried about your hash potentially being compromised, and you don't want your account to be compromised because your hash is compromised, yeah, using really random, weird characters, granted, it slows down the process, and you know, with the layered security model, we have this aspect of, you know, early detection is important, hopefully, and the reason we have password exploration policies is not to annoy our users, it's so that we can limit a breach in the event that it's not detected. What's that? Annoy? Oh, absolutely, yeah, we want to. I'm not saying we don't want to do that. I'm just saying that it's not our primary goal. Absolutely, it's a goal. Cause as much mischief as possible. Yeah, I don't know. I've got some of those. I mean, yeah, but non-printable stuff. That's the idea. Get creative with it. I mean, if you got no length requirements, I love gangster rap lyrics for my passwords. Dude, man. Me and Dre, we thug it out. Yes.
About 6 months ago, I had to use a system for school, and passwords, rules were type the 8 characters, letters only lowercase.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Complain. Like, I don't know, I do this to Wells Fargo. So I have a pretty good long, I mean, I think Wells Fargo is limited to 16 characters for webmail or web banking. And they don't have any sort of two-factor authentication. And I write them a strongly worded email every month, says I'd like to have all, you know, two-factor authentication. They're like, no, we don't support that. I'm like, it's easier to break into my Gmail, my Wells Fargo than my Gmail. Because what do you know? Google does some two-step stuff. Thank you. Drink. As you drink, your errors become more frequent. Just kidding, they get better. Yeah, I mean, if you're limited on, I mean, it's like, that's the thing I tell a lot of my clients is they're like, well, you know, this is a legacy system, vendors doing blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yell at the vendor. I don't know. Like, we got to quit. We got to figure out how to quit being given. Take off my shirt. No. What? No. No, I mean, we have to figure out how to fight that. So, I mean, another example I like to use, now I see your hand, I'll be here in just a moment, is the baby monitor thing you see in the news, and they're like, hackers get on baby monitor and yell obscenities at the baby. Like, it has nothing to do with hackers. It's a creep gets on a baby monitor that's probably wide open or using default credentials and acts skeevy. It has nothing to do with hacking. But the vendor pushes this stuff out there knowing that. If you work for vendors, by all means, you know, be the change you wish to see in the world, sort of thing. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, really long ones. Yeah. I mean, 32 characters sounds good. Phrases. And yeah. That was a good password until you said it. Right, that's true. I don't know your substitutions. Jack and Jill ran up the hill. After that, we don't know what happened because they don't like to talk about it. I'm going to just work my way through. Yes?
You're that mad at your bank for having security. I haven't thought of those things.
Because I don't really care that much. That's the truth. Like, I'm not lying. If you pop my bank account and like use all my money, guess what? I get it all back. I don't care. This is America. No, I mean, because all the banks are doing it equally as poorly. Equally as poor. Yeah. 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 I'd love to have that, but I don't care enough. I'd like to just complain. I like to complain a lot. And if I fix things, I can't complain. So stop. Don't ruin my fun. Green shirt, yes. Oh, it makes you happier too. Damn, it feels good to be a gangster. You just smile when you write that. Like, Yeah, I mean that's the thing. That's the thing. Yeah, it's the user education that's more difficult than the policy changes. And that like again back to XKCD cartoon for everything. We have spent a good solid 20 years teaching people to make these terrible passwords. So it's going to take some time to undo that. And I think giving everybody their password is like a good way to start because people do care. I mean honestly, let's be honest. Most of the attacks still come from the outside. Edward Snowden's are rare. And he's the hero. Thank you. Yes? Not unless, like you talking about using sentences? Yes and no. I don't have California knows how to party in any of my word lists. Or I ain't a killer, but don't push me. Getting revenge is the next Swedish joy next to getting cookies. Like, that's not in a word list anywhere. It might be in 20 years if we can fix our password ideas, but Jedi. In the sense of brute forcing? Well, if we're looking at, but we're doing 8-character stuff. Honestly, and I get that. Like, if we're doing like just a generic brute forcing, the question is, if we're doing it for noobs, I mean, can we deal with just sheer run John against a list of hashes? Yeah, you can. It'll just take a while, and I don't like to wait. I'll wait if it's worth it, but I mean, if I can. Oh, you mean to pull the lists out? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's basically, and that's what we've done with that sorted list. I mean, it's all of our own cracking files, and Katie, you all right over there? Sweet. So, yes, sir, stripe chart. Yes. Correct horse battery staple is in my word list. No, I have never found it. Yes, sir. I mean, 30 days is about as much as folks will twitch. How long? It depends on if it's in my word list, and depends on how quickly I can brute force if I have to do that. If I'm doing 2.4 billion attempts per second at 9 characters with all 4 types of characters, I'll let you do the math because.
Not that long.
No.
Not 30 days.
No, not 30 days. Less than 30 days. But so you're limiting impact.
So you're limiting impact because you can.
Yeah, that's when your other controls.
And only use it for half a month.
If your other controls are in place and you see someone log into a system, like this is another thing that I complain about when I get on pen tests. Everybody logs failed logins. How many people log successful logins? So if I grab creds and I log into 50 machines that person has never logged into before and nobody knows that happened, that's probably an issue. So that's where your other defenses come in. If I suddenly start accessing all this stuff from places it's never been seen before, anomaly detection should kick in. Right. Real-time SCIM. Yes?
That conversation just made me think about what happened at Target where the HVAC
Yep.
password was used to compromise the rest of the system.
Yeah, wasn't in scope, so that's nice. Trustway's off the hook in my opinion. PCI's on the hook for that. That's my unprofessional opinion. Right. Yep. No, that was a debacle. So, well, I'll quit early. Thank you so much for your time. We'll be around.